How one woman changed English history forever. In the annals of English history, few figures loom as large or cast as long a shadow as Elizabeth Tudor, the woman who would become Elizabeth I. Her story is not just one of personal triumph, but of a nation transformed. This is the tale of how one woman changed English history forever. Born on September 7, 1533, Elizabeth entered the world amid controversy and danger. Her father, King Henry VIII, had broken with Rome and the Catholic Church just to marry her mother, Anne Boleyn. Yet by the time Elizabeth was barely 2 years old, her world had shattered. Anne Boleyn was executed on charges of treason, adultery, and witchcraft. Elizabeth was declared illegitimate and removed from the line of succession. For a child who would one day rule an empire, Elizabeth's early years were marked by uncertainty and peril. She lived in the shadow of the executioner's axe that had claimed her mother. The young princess received an exceptional education, mastering Latin, Greek, French, Italian, and Spanish. She could discuss theology with bishops and philosophy with scholars. But knowledge alone would not be enough to survive the treacherous waters of Tudor politics. When her half-brother Edward died in 1553, England plunged into crisis. Lady Jane Grey, the 9-day queen, was executed. Mary Tudor, Elizabeth's older half-sister, took the throne and began her bloody campaign to restore Catholicism to England. During Mary's reign, nearly 300 Protestants were burned at the stake. Elizabeth, as a Protestant, lived under constant suspicion. She was imprisoned in the Tower of London on suspicion of plotting against her sister. The same tower where her mother had met her end now held Elizabeth, and many expected she would share Anne Boleyn's fate. But Elizabeth possessed something her mother had lacked: political cunning. She survived Mary's reign through careful diplomacy and strategic silence. She attended Catholic Mass when required but never fully committed to either faith publicly. This religious ambiguity would later become one of her greatest political assets. On November 17, 1558, Mary Tudor died childless, and Elizabeth ascended to the throne at age 25. England was deeply divided, economically struggling, and surrounded by hostile Catholic powers. Many questioned whether a young woman could possibly rule such a troubled nation. They would soon discover that they had vastly underestimated Elizabeth Tudor. Elizabeth's first masterstroke was the Elizabethan religious settlement of 1559. Rather than swinging England violently back to Protestantism after Mary's Catholic restoration, Elizabeth chose a middle path. She established a moderate Protestant church that could accommodate both reformers and traditionalists. This compromise, though imperfect, brought religious stability to England after decades of bloody turmoil. But it was Elizabeth's handling of marriage that truly demonstrated her revolutionary approach to monarchy. Every king needed an heir, and every queen needed a husband to provide one. European royalty expected Elizabeth to marry quickly and produce sons. Instead, she turned the question of marriage into a diplomatic weapon. For 45 years, she entertained suitors from across Europe, using the possibility of marriage to forge alliances, prevent wars, and keep England's enemies guessing. The French princes, the Archduke Charles of Austria, King Philip of Spain, and many others all believed they might win England through Elizabeth's hand. Meanwhile, Elizabeth played each against the others, extracting maximum political advantage while surrendering none of her power. She famously declared herself married to England, telling Parliament, "I am already bound unto a husband, which is the kingdom of England." This decision to remain unmarried was revolutionary. No previous queen regnant had successfully ruled alone for an extended period. Elizabeth proved that a woman could wield absolute power without a male consort. She retained complete control over England's foreign policy, military decisions, and domestic governance. Her court became a center of learning, art, and culture, attracting the greatest minds of the age. The greatest test of Elizabeth's reign came with the Spanish Armada in 1588. King Philip of Spain, the most powerful monarch in Europe, assembled a massive fleet to invade England and restore Catholic rule. Many expected England's small navy to be overwhelmed. Elizabeth's response became the stuff of legend. She personally addressed her troops at Tilbury, declaring, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." The defeat of the Spanish Armada was not just a military victory. It was a psychological triumph that established England as a major European power. English confidence soared, and the nation began to see itself as divinely protected. This victory enabled the expansion of English trade, exploration, and eventually, empire. Under Elizabeth's rule, England experienced an unprecedented cultural flowering. This was the age of William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser. The Elizabethan theater revolutionized drama, creating works that still move audiences 4 centuries later. English exploration flourished under Francis Drake and Walter Raleigh. The foundations were laid for England's later colonial empire. Elizabeth's court became a carefully choreographed performance of royal power. She created the cult of Gloriana, presenting herself as the Virgin Queen, wedded to her people. Her progresses through the countryside allowed ordinary English people to see their queen, building a personal connection between monarch and subject that strengthened royal authority. She understood that monarchy was theater, and she was its greatest performer. Perhaps most remarkably, Elizabeth established the principle that effective governance mattered more than traditional gender roles. She proved that intelligence, political skill, and strength of character were more important than physical strength or masculine authority. Her success paved the way for future female rulers and challenged assumptions about women's capabilities that had persisted for centuries. When Elizabeth died on March 24, 1603, she left England transformed. The struggling, divided nation she had inherited had become a confident European power. The English language had been enriched by the greatest literary flowering in its history. The foundations of England's later global empire had been established. Most importantly, she had proven that a woman could not only rule, but rule magnificently. Elizabeth's reign changed English history forever because she demonstrated that effective leadership transcends gender. She showed that political intelligence and personal charisma could triumph over military might and traditional authority. Her example inspired centuries of strong female rulers and helped establish England's unique political culture. The Elizabethan age became synonymous with English greatness. 4 centuries later, Elizabeth I remains the gold standard by which English monarchs are measured. She did not merely occupy the throne. She transformed it. In doing so, she changed not just English history, but the very idea of what it meant to be a queen. Elizabeth Tudor proved that one woman, with courage, intelligence, and determination, could indeed change the world forever.